with that, I'd like to welcome and introduce Mr. Mike Ettling, Chief Executive Officer at Unit4. Mike,
thanks, Greg.
Welcome. Great to see you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I'd like to just start out with a couple thanks. There's three thanks I really want to start with. First one is to Millennium for running this event and hosting it, and also more importantly for looking after our joint customers. So, Phil and team really appreciate what you do as a partner of Unit4. Secondly, I want to thank all of you customers for being our customer in the first place. And thirdly, this is my first live presentation since February 2020. So I want to thank you for being part of my return to normal, which is absolutely fantastic. So if I'm a bit rusty, please forgive me. What I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time just giving you an update on Unit4, talking a little bit about where we're going at a high level with the product. Jane and the team are going to get into more detail on that. And just share where we see financials in the world of Unit4 and where we're taking it. Firstly, one of the interesting things we did over the COVID period was sell the company, which is the subject of a whole different keynote, which we won't do today. But as you know, or some of you may know, we were owned by Advent since going private off the Dutch Stock Exchange some 7.5 years ago. And in January, we started a process to find a new investor and find a new backer for the company. We had a really, really great interest in Unit4 because of our products, because of our focus on customer, because of where the business is going. And in the end, we had the luxury as a leadership team of having three potential partners who we were equally comfortable with culturally, who we could have gone with, which is a very great position for any leadership team to be in. And in the end, we chose TA Associates. Those of you who don't know TA is a software-only investor. They're a $14 billion fund, Boston headquartered, have a deep reputation in investing in software businesses. And why we like TA was their roots as a firm is in growth. They're more venture-orientated. They've been a growth type of investor. They invest for growth. They're not your classic barbarians at the gate, leverage buyout type of investor. And that was really important for us in terms of what we want to do because, Unit4 is fast becoming a growth company. Even during 2020 in COVID, we grew the business at 3%. This year, we'll be very close to double digit. And by 22, we'll be a double-digit growth company. Our cloud business is growing at 30% year on year. So I think that's really important to appreciate. And I also wanted to get fresh capital into the business. TA brought one of their investors in their fund called the Partners Group out of Switzerland to the table to also invest, which I was delighted with because Partners is a $100 billion fund. So, very, very deep pockets. And the motivation for Advent wanting to get out was they were in 7 years. But our motivation as a leadership team was we want to do more acquisitions. We want to really grow and scale the business. And we need fresh capital to do that. So we went through that process in January to March. We signed the deal on the 18th of March. And we handed the keys to TA on the 1st of July. And so far, I would say what we sold to them, they're discovering is inside the can. And what they sold to us, we're discovering is inside the can. So far, honeymoon phase, but it's really going well. And the thing which is really valuable to us, why we chose TA besides their growth culture, was a lot of PE firms, some of the others who were in the final sort of round, they tend to do a few big investments. TA do a lot of investments. So at any one point in time, they have about 100 portfolio companies, all software. A lot of them pure cloud companies. So we wanted the pattern recognition. And so far, that's been great. So if I say to TA, so what is your view on quota ratio to total cost of sales rep? Within 24 hours, I've got a 4x4 with a plot chart of all their companies and what they consider best practice and what they consider acceptable, etc. So that is really valuable to a company like us as we're on this journey to becoming a pure cloud type of business. We've also been doing a lot of work on how we engage with the market, how we position ourselves in the market. And, I could stand here and trumpet all of our successes and what we've achieved. But I think the most important thing is some of the accolades we're getting in the industry around, our performance, our products, and, two of them which I'll highlight, which are we're really, really proud of, the Infotech Awards. If you go and have a look at that, they rate both kind of how customers feel about our service as well as about our product. And why that's important is, many people can be cynical about some of the mainstream analysts that it's pay to play kind of thing, and the references are all curated. With Infotech, I don't know who the references are. I don't even have no influence on it. They go out independently to my customers to kind of build their report. So that has a very, very independent slant and feel to it. And then the other one we're very proud of, which we got a few weeks ago, was ERP Today magazine in the UK, who gave us the award of the ERP Vendor of the Year for 2021, which, we were competing with the likes of a few little German ERP companies and a few little West Coast ERP companies and a couple others in that mix. So we're very proud of that achievement. One other thing I'd like to talk about, and when we think about customer focus, 2 years ago, one of the key things about being a cloud company is that the power of the customer community. Now, those of you who go back to on-premise days, on-premise software companies almost didn't want to let their customers talk to each other, partly because we didn't want you to figure out what discounts you were each getting in the on-premise days. And so then customers went out and created user groups to kind of beat up the on-premise software company. Well, the cloud model around this is totally different. If you look at cloud companies, we want our customers to talk to each other. We want the community to be thriving and help each other and be supportive and be engaging. Because actually in the cloud, we don't discount to the extent you see discounting in the on-premise world. So we launched Community4You, which is our customer community platform and forum. We launched this in 2019. And this, as you can see, it's like the single repository, and everything is now channeled through Community4You. So everything from ideation takes place there. So when customers put ideas for the product on that, our product managers are monitoring it and looking at what ideas are coming through, and we allow our customers to vote on the ideas. So we can see, well, more customers like this idea, let's focus on this versus just this idea where there's one vote for the idea. All of our release notes come out on it. The knowledge bases are available to customers on that. There's peer-to-peer assistance and discussion groups on the Community4You. So let me ask, how many of you are registered on Community4You? It's awesome. So we got 15,000 users now registered on Community4You. About 1,500 are financials users, actively using it. So I'd really encourage you to use it, contribute to it, be engaged with it, because it's a key way we will run the business, and it will be the single way we share information in the future. So we're slowly switching off all other channels of communication, outwards. So you won't get an email on release notes. You'll get an email pointing you to the community. It will become that single platform over time, and we'll hopefully build on this more and more as we go forward. So really an important tool which we put a lot of investment into, and we're very happy with how it's being used and people are engaging with it. So let's talk a little bit about where we're going to go with financials over the next few years. I guess I keep getting these questions from people that we are, or these comments that is Unit 4 committed to financials. Are we sunsetting financials? And let me categorically say, we are committed to financials. We're not sunsetting financials. We're not, going to turn our back on it. We're not going to come to you with a sledgehammer and say, go to ERPX or go to this product or whatever. But we do have a roadmap and a program and a journey we want to take you on to enable you to get more out of it and to enable you to get more benefits out of the product. So if you think about where we are today, big focus last year and this year was kind of getting to the continuous release model, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. Big philosophy around this is going to be a single product, so we're not going to have a cloud version and an on-premise version. There will be, the version we have is deployable in the cloud or deployable on-premise, and there won't be bias introduced in terms of the core functionality. I'll talk a little bit about some of the things cloud users will be able to access, which just because of architecture and design, you won't be able to access if you're on premise. And it's a very stable, mature product, which does what it does. And when we did the sale process to TA, we actually spent quite a bit of time on financials, because obviously part of their due diligence was to look at our whole product suite. And our goal is to shrink our product suite. To be very clear on that, but don't confuse that with what we want to do with financials. So we're fortunate, we don't have a huge tail of products. I have about 20 odd products, and we see that shrinking over time to probably about 10. And there are products we're going to sunset, but financials is absolutely not one of them. So please take comfort from that in terms of where we're going with it. So what is the focus where we're taking this, and I'll come to this in a short while. Firstly, we will next year invest a lot more in cloud, the cloudification of the product. I'll come back to that in a minute, what that involves. Big focus on continuous release. Now, why continuous release? Well, one of the big attributes, I think, which makes cloud businesses different to on-premise software business is the pace of innovation. The way innovation is produced, the way innovation is dropped. You wake up sometimes and something's different on your iPhone. And you don't need 50 days of testing. You don't call up Apple and say, hey, I haven't tested that yet. Please don't, I don't want it. You take it, you figure it out. That's the world we're moving into. And that world, within certain boundaries, is certainly what's happening in the B2B world as well. You're seeing a world in mature cloud companies where there are small changes, UI, look and feel stuff, which get dropped continuously. No testing, whatever. And then you see bigger release events where stuff which has an implication to customers' processes, going through more of a structured release type model. So we're going to put a lot more investment into continuous release to enable everyone on 14 to get this and to get more innovation faster. And part of the mentality of it is that we're going to get away from this whole mindset of big releases, 14, 15, 16. 14 is the last release in the old world kind of concept. From now on, it's just going to be continuous type of releases and innovation which you'll get in the product. We're not going to benchmark it to the old on-premise way of talking about releases, which is how it works in the cloud. You get quarterly releases or monthly releases or continuous type releases. So that's a big focus in terms of how we're doing it. It also means, we can be faster if there's some statutory changes or different things in market. We don't have to batch things up for a big release. We can be faster in dropping stuff to you and reacting to things you want as a customer. The other plan is to really kind of extend the core of financials beyond just financials functionality. So we're talking, you know what we have in financials. I don't need to talk to you about that. But as we move into the cloud, we're developing a lot of exciting things in what we call our ERPX platform. And a lot of that stuff we're going to make available to financials users in the cloud. So for example, we have an extension kit in our ERPX platform, which is an ability through APIs to build additional apps and build it in a way that you don't have to go jerry-rig the core code of an application. We're going to make that available to financials customers over time. We have a integration kit in our ERPX platform, which we think is going to be very valuable for financials customers, because one of the things we see with a lot of our financials customers is you've got financials in the center of a very complex world or complex ecosystem of technology, and often the integrations are very single point failure because they're very specific point-to-point type integrations, not built in a very modern way. So we're going to bring an integration kit in which should enable you to integrate to things much faster. And at our X4U event, which I'll talk about in a minute, we're going to announce some really interesting stuff around integration kits and what we're doing with the product in that regard. So those kind of things, we have a chatbot capability, which we have in the cloud. Those kind of things we want to bring to the financials customers over time. So there'll be a big focus around how we do that. That technology is there today. It's not like we're going to go build that. It's there. It's being used by ERP customers. It's dependent on APIs and building the APIs into financials, which will enable it to work with financials. So we hopefully will be able to enhance that. And then some of our other products which we've acquired, and as I said, we will be acquiring more stuff over the next few years, and that's part of the reason why we did the deal with TA. So things like FP&A, we will build better integrations and better connectivity to financials. So you can start accessing more of what Unit4 has to offer versus just being an island, kind of by itself. So that's a big focus in terms of where we want to take the product, and we'll hear a lot more about this from Jane, and you'll also hear a lot more at our X4U event in a few weeks' time in terms of where we're going with some of these offerings. Let me talk a little bit about cloud. So I'm not going to give you a lecture on cloud because one of my philosophies about cloud is that it's kind of the world is going there. So I don't have to push customers there. You're all going to cloud. Everyone is embracing cloud, but everyone has a different timetable to get there. And everyone's kind of got to figure it out because you all have different environments, and that timetable and that journey you all have to go on is really important. I would say, in my experience, and I've been around cloud software now for about 10 years, 10, 12 years, I would say the single biggest word, if I could put it down to one word, which impacts the cloud journey, it's this swear word called customization. And that is, without a doubt, the single biggest impact on anyone's cloud journey. Because cloud solutions are generally built from a kind of standardized mentality, fit to standard configuration versus customization, extension versus modifying the code in the core application. And when people want to go to cloud, they suddenly realize they got all this stuff which they got to take out, and to do that it often means changing business processes to kind of get to a more standard world. Now, you'd all say, well, I remember thinking of on-prem days 15 years ago. A lot of people were saying that's why you should implement on-prem. Somehow we never listened when we implemented on-prem solutions and got into this world of customization. There's no reason why an on-prem solution can't be cleaned out and go through that same journey, even if it's still on-prem. This is about a philosophy of how you deploy software. I'll give you an example. At Unit4, we've deployed 3 major corporate platforms in the last 18 months. We deployed Kuros, which is the Community for You platform. We deployed Gainsight, which is our customer success platform. And we did a very big program which we deployed ServiceNow, and we ripped out 5 support platforms. You know, we had everything. We had Jira, we had BMC Cloud, we had Service Cloud. You name the case management tool, we probably ran it. And we ripped all of it out and put in ServiceNow. Every one of those projects, we went from start to go live was 3 months. Every single project. And the reason we were so successful was we were ruthless about saying, vendor, if you come in here and ask us what we want, we will terminate the contract. You come in here and tell us what we're going to get. Tell us what's best practice, we'll change our processes. You know, come with a best practice model and we'll change to that. That's how we did it. And that's the world where we're moving to and where cloud is moving to. You know, there's obviously a lot of other benefits of being on cloud in terms of, you know, particularly these benefits I think have become very prevalent in the last 18 months. You know, we've certainly seen with a lot of customers, customers who were more cloudified in terms of their environment, kind of just eased into lockdowns easily in terms from a technology perspective, and versus customers who weren't, and, you know, were trying to figure out how to access the server in the broom cupboard, you know, down the hall. So we've seen cloud, we've seen an escalation in demand for cloud over the last 18 months, and an escalation in the demand for, you know, I wouldn't say it's like demand for cloud, it's demand for being able to run our systems anywhere, anytime, in a highly robust, you know, redundant kind of way. So we have a deep, deep relationship. In fact, we are the second biggest Microsoft Azure user in Europe today. So we are, you know, we've chosen to go more single cloud. We do all of our cloud products on Azure. And part of the reason for that is just, you know, the scale of investment Microsoft is putting into Azure is absolutely mind-boggling. You know, I spent a day last year, before lockdowns, in Bellevue with Microsoft, talking about Azure, talking about their security and cybersecurity, and, you know, it's like no one's going to be able to compete with that over time. The scale of investment is so significant. You know, I would say that actually big enterprise companies, you know, whether you're Nestle or HSBC, are also coming to the conclusion that they cannot compete. They cannot run their own data centers. You know, they cannot provide the redundancy and scalability and resilience that Microsoft, AWS, and Google are starting to offer in their data centers. So, you know, I think one of the big advantages of financials on the Azure cloud is that, you know, you get all of that redundancy, you get all of that resilience, you get all of that security and cybersecurity investment, which is, you know, second to none in the marketplace. And that's not something to be underestimated. I think the other big advantage is, you know, the ability to run the software anywhere. You know, this became a big thing, and as we go back into what I think is going to be a very hybrid world going forward, and we at Unit4, for example, September last year announced to all of our staff that, you know, you're no longer employed tied to an office. So your employment contract doesn't say, you know, located in Reading or wherever. You are tied to work from where you're comfortable. So come to the office if you need to today, work at home if you need to, sit in your garden. You know, we will get to a point where everyone at Unit4 has a WeWork type of membership. You know, pop into a WeWork, so work from where you're comfortable. Now, for that to happen, all of the corporate applications need to be accessible in a secure way from anywhere. And why this is so important, this is the really fascinating thing. I'm very fortunate to sit on the board of one of the biggest cybersecurity business based in the UK, but very global, called NCC Group. And we track, as directors, we get a fortnightly update on the cyber threat levels on a global basis and what's happened. So you'd think with lockdowns and COVID, everyone's sitting at home, cyber threat would go down. Cyber threat has escalated 5 times in the last year and a half. 5 times. And we won't go into a topic on where the main actors are and who's escalating that, but you can guess where it's coming from, and it's not Russia. So we're living in a world where our employees are going to need software anyway, but cyber threat is 5 times higher than what it was pre-COVID. So how do you deal with that? How do you do that? Yes, you've got to go to the cloud, but you've got to have a secure environment and you've got to be able to make that work. So when I say we're going to put a lot of investment into the cloud, we run on the cloud. We've got 100 customers in the cloud doing continuous release at the moment on financials. So we know it works. We want to build better tools to enable that migration to the cloud. So the whole process of how we automate, do cloud migration assessments, help you find those horrible customizations which were created 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and help you get those out so you can go to the cloud with a much healthier, standardized solution. That's where we're going to put more investment into. Tools to do that, tools to enable that, and then constantly looking at our code to optimize the code to run on Azure. And one of the things about Azure is, and all of the hyperscalers, those of you who use them for other applications, as you know, the best way to describe Azure or AWS is, it's like you arrive at a skyscraper one day and it's at night and you've got to walk up the skyscraper. So as you walk, every floor you switch the lights on. But of course you don't need the lights once you're on the top floor. You don't need the whole skyscraper lit up. That's exactly how a hyperscaler works. You switch the lights on, you start paying. And so the trick in code, in software, moving software to a hyperscaler environment is to stop using resources. We only use resources when at the moment they needed, because it becomes very expensive in hyperscalers when you don't. That's why a lot of people say, oh, just put the solution in AWS and it will work. Yeah, it will work, but it's way more expensive than running it on the server they've depreciated over the last 10 years. It's for that reason. And memory is very expensive in the hyperscaler world. So we will do a lot of investment and continue to invest in optimizing our code to really optimize how it runs in a hyperscaler going forward. And I would encourage you all to, call up your reps, call up your account managers and get a cloud migration assessment. Where we'll come in and look at how you've deployed and what it will take to go to the cloud. What is the journey going to be like? Is it a tough journey? Is it an easy journey? We'll do that, and I'd encourage you all to do that. Lastly, let me talk a little bit about X4U. We launched X4U last year. Those who watched it last year? So X4U is becoming our customer event. We didn't have a global customer event previously. We kind of had a lot of regional events. And with COVID, we took the opportunity to launch a global customer event, albeit was digital. But we actually designed the platform we're using to do this to enable us to go back to a hybrid type of event, which is something we will start doing. We're experimenting with it this year, and I believe by next year we'll be there in full force, where we will have customer events, run by a global platform. So you'll come to the event, there'll be local things, some of the global keynotes will be broadcast, and it actually works well for our customer base, because a lot of my customers are public sector, not-for-profit, higher education, and those organizations just don't get budget or get allowed to jet off to Barcelona or Vegas for a big customer event. So it actually is a model we think will work really well for our customers. There's a lot of tracks around financials at this year's event. covering a lot of different financial topics, which you'll hear about. And then we have some really exciting keynote speakers lined up. We've got Mark Gallagher, who's an executive who's been around Formula One for the last, 25, 30 years. And he's going to talk about business lessons from Formula One and how Formula One focuses on the customer and some of those insights. We have another speaker who's not on here called Steve Cadigan, who's going to talk about the employee experience and how important winning the employee experience is now to succeed in business. Steve is a future of work guy, but he's really cut his teeth as the head of talent at LinkedIn. He was at LinkedIn when they went from like 400 to 4,000 people. Very global, very interesting perspectives on how to deal with employees. And then never to be missed, don't know if any of you have ever seen him, but Peter Hinson is probably one of the most succinct futurists I've ever worked with in terms of someone who can look at everything going on in the world and kind of distill it into this is what it means for you, this is what it means for business, this is what are the major shifts we're seeing in business. So he's going to open up day 2, and really exciting guy, hyper energetic, can do does a 30-minute keynote with 500 slides. And you will not be bored, I promise you. So we're also going to announce a lot of new, exciting things on product. So you'll hear about what we're going to do on the different products and some of the stuff I talked about, which I'm not going to share with you now around integration kits and where we're going with that. So let me end off by saying financials is here to stay. We value you as a customer. We absolutely don't want to see you going away. We want to engage more with you. So we want to build a journey. We want to give you more benefits. We want to give you more product you can use with financials. And yes, over time, you'll get access to more and more of what we're building in the ERPX architecture and platform. But absolutely, we value you, and we're not going to sunset financials. That's absolutely not the intention and not the plan. And hopefully, you'll see that when you come to X4U, and hopefully you'll see that in terms of how, we engage with you. And with that, I want to introduce you to Jane, and hopefully you'll see a lot more as Jane talks about what we're going to do on the roadmap. So with that, thank you. Thank you for being my return to normal, and have a great conference.